I am Clive Jordan. I'm the co-founder and facilitator of Make Votes Matter, which is the campaign for PR by 2021. We're very optimistic, and we're activist-led, cross-party organisation. We work closely with organisations like the Labour Campaign for Electoral Reform, Unlock Democracy, the Electoral Reform Society, and so on. And our focus is on grassroots action, local groups, and on alliance building between organisations and political parties and politicians, basically trying to generate as much activity and momentum as possible towards changing the electoral system.
And one of the ways that I think now progressive alliances are very difficult to pull off, and I think my own party was originally founded as a progressive alliance when it was formed in 1900. It was a federation of various socialist, cooperative, trade union organisations. It's ossified over those since 1900 and become an entity in itself, and quite tribal, as many political parties are. But actually, when you think about the beginnings of the Labour Party, it was very much a federal structure, if you want. And I think ultimately now where we find ourselves in a situation is where democracy is in danger because of the right, the populist right across Europe, across America. We've seen an economy which isn't working for the vast majority of people. And we also see policies, increasingly they are narrow set of policies which are discussed and debated, and many issues which are of extreme importance, both to ourselves as a society, as a planet, as a country, are not being discussed, are not being developed, because there's a very niche set of easily dominated opinions.
I support, and I have always supported, a system of fair votes in this country. And by fair votes I mean, I think if you get 15% of the vote, you should broadly get 15% of the seats in an election. I think the party that gets the most votes in a general election should win that election, which is not what we've had in several moments in British history. And above all, I think all areas, all parts of the country, all votes in this country should count equally no matter where you live. And I think those are pretty sound principles upon which to try and conduct an election and have an electoral system. Look, I'm in favour of something for Westminster like we see for the Scottish Parliament. So you would have broadly 2/3 MPs elected as they do now for constituencies, and then top-up regions to make the election proportional. So you'd have all the benefits of what you have now. You'd have individual MPs for each area, for each constituency, but you would also have a genuinely representative general election. And the big question, particularly in the Labour Party, that people ask is, well, would you get strong government? We've got like a fetish in this country for this idea of strong government, by which people tend to mean, would you have one party in charge and not coalitions? Well, look, there wouldn't necessarily be coalitions if you have a system like that. Scotland, again, is a good example. I think the system was introduced to try and prevent one-party government in Scotland, and that's a good example of how that doesn't always pan out. But look, if people don't vote for one party to be in overall control, I don't think the electoral system should artificially boost their vote somehow in order for them to do it. I mean, we talk so much about strong government that I think the conversation needs to be about good government. I mean, I grew up in the 1980s in Sunderland under Thatcherism. That was an example of strong government, I'd imagine, but it wasn't a particularly pleasant experience. If I was being critical of my own side, something like the decision over Iraq was strong government, but it wasn't good government when you look at the consequences involved.
And others see the obvious anomaly of a system where, aside from the 60 or so marginal swing seats that Clive has talked about, that form electoral or battleground these days, many people have switched off from the concept of their vote actually making a difference. And I've been in pubs and bars and queues where you hear it, don't you? Well, I'm not going to vote. What's the point? Actually, it's not far from the truth, are they? Because in many areas, it doesn't matter. I found myself, ashamedly, voting Conservative in my local ward council elections recently to keep out 2 UKIP candidates, and the Tories squeezed them out by about 40 votes. That's the choice you're left with. Whereas in an AV system, there's a fair chance we've at least had a Liberal in there, no disrespect to anyone, but you get the drift. And we need to change this limit, and we need to do it quickly. So we know first past the post encourages tactical voting. Smaller parties get less votes at elections, create safe seats, which receive less attention traditionally from the main parties. We know all the problems that causes. So we need to move away from an atmosphere where the parties, the people that gain most, are launching gimmick-type policies, and have something that people can make a judgment about and make people feel that their vote is worth something. On that, I hope everybody in this room is agreed, though I can't suggest to you in a long list of options which I favour. I actually don't have a mandate from my union to tell you which one I favour, but I do have a mandate to push for the debate about reform to be promulgated within my own trade union and more widely across the TUC.
These are, and I speak for a party which in history is the greatest beneficiary of the first past the post system. We won, as Jonathan said, 95% of the seats which we contested, and did so on 50% of the vote. I've only got one word to describe that outcome, and it is corrupt. I think it is absolutely wrong, immoral, bad, needs changed, and I think the problem with it is that these manifestly disproportional results and unfair results throughout the United Kingdom are creating alienation and a sort of a dislocation of people from the political system and a loss of faith in the political system, a consultation with the people of this country on whether they want an electoral system which gives a proportional outcome as a matter of principle. Rather than squabble about the technocratic merits of one system versus another, frankly, we can do it in the House of Commons to our heart's content, and I'm sure we'll come up with something. But we need to get a mandate for the principle. And that's so I don't for one moment say that because that vote was lost in 2012, that means that we shouldn't be arguing for another one. I think we should. In fact, I'm not even convinced we have to have a referendum on it, because actually most of the major constitutional changes in terms of votes for women and the extension of the franchise by age and various other things, they didn't have a referendum. The Parliament decided to actually make the political reforms. So I think if the case for reform is strong enough, it can be made.
But I also think, in terms of tactics, we have to make the connection, not about head and numbers and facts and history, but with heart. And I think that's the biggest challenge that we've got, to show that changing the system will change people's lives. Because if people are going to look at it, and I speak as the vice chair of the AV campaign, the Yes campaign in the referendum in 2011, we failed to connect with people. We failed to show how it would actually make a difference to people's lives. We saw in the European referendum something that could have been very abstract around a political arrangement over there actually made sense to people when we started talking about the impact on the NHS. We saw the Scottish referendum have a huge impact with people discussing it in pubs because people saw that it connected with people's lives. We have to make that connection. Change the electoral system and you change people's lives. It's as simple as that. Why do we get a vacuous debate about tax and spend, about efficiency savings, inheritance tax? Why don't we discuss climate change? Why don't we discuss workers' rights? Why don't we discuss disability? Why don't we discuss the plight of the disabled? Because of our system, and we have to break it open.
To getting the Labour Party to think about the electoral reform, not as the only thing that will get us back into government, because I've just been reading all the stuff about the boundaries, and if that isn't stacked against us, I don't know what is. But because the boundaries don't matter so much if you have a PR system, and because we should be doing this because of the sake of democracy, because grown-up people in grown-up politics talk to each other. If they agree with each other, they get things done. If we're in a sort of politics where we are tribal and we go on being tribal, we'll end up with the biggest tribe, which is the Conservative tribe, unfortunately, getting into power all the time, and you see all the things that we wanted to work for slipping away.